The defeat at the Battle of Ankara, which resulted in the captivity of Yildirim Bayezid Khan, was a great disaster for the Ottoman Empire. With the ruler captured, the state was left leaderless. Each of Yildirim's 3 sons, who were not captured, fled to a corner. Emir Suleman, the eldest prince, took what he could from the Bursa palace and fled straight to Romelia. Prince Isa Çelebi was hiding in Balıkesir with the soldiers under his command. Prince Mehmed Çelebi had gone up the Bolu mountains with his army. Since Prince Musa Çelebi did not leave his father's side until the end of the war, he was captured with his father and remained in Timur's custody. Prince Mustafa disappeared at the height of the war and was never heard from again. Some said he was dead, others said he had been taken prisoner by Timur. The youngest prince, Qasim, was left in Bursa because he was still young and was not taken to the battle. Prince Emir Suleman had taken him and his sister along with his family before leaving Bursa for Romelia. After his victory at Ankara, Timur ravaged Anatolia, plundering cities, laying waste to lands, and seizing every treasure he could find. To ensure the Ottomans would never rise again, he restored the former Anatolian principalities. He released Mehmed Bey, the son of Aladdin Ali Bey of the Karamanids, who had been held in Bursa, and placed him at the head of the Karamanid principality. The domain of Isfendiyar Bey, Emir of Sinop and Lord of the Kandaroğulları, was enlarged by granting him the cities of Kastamonu and Çankırı. Timur sought to capture the eldest of Bayezid's sons, Prince Suleman, whom he regarded as heir to the Ottoman throne. But upon learning that Suleman had slipped away into Romelia, Timur turned to diplomacy, sending an envoy to demand submission and tribute. In response, Emir Suleman accepted Timur's offer and sent envoys with valuable gifts. Timur told the envoy, "I have forgotten the past. Let him not fear, let him come, and I shall show him my friendship." He then issued a decree recognizing Suleman's authority over the Ottoman lands in Romelia. While acknowledging Emir Suleman's authority, Timur also sent envoys to the other Shehzadis, Isa and Mehmed Çelebi. He sent them a menshur, a formal letter of recognition, stating that he would accept their suzerainty, provided they recognized his supremacy. His goal was to set Bayezid's sons against one another and ignite a struggle for the throne, thus ensuring the Ottoman Empire would remain fractured and weak. While staying near the Aegean, Timur received word that Sultan Bayezid had fallen ill. He dispatched his personal physicians, including Izzettin Masud Shirazi and Celaleddin Arab, to treat the captive ruler, but the treatments failed. Bayezid died in Akşehir on March 8, 1403. Today, there are 2 main views regarding how Bayezid died. Ottoman and Mamluk historians generally wrote that he succumbed to illness, but some Byzantine and Western sources claim he took poison hidden in a ring and ended his own life. However, the fact that no contemporary Ottoman historians mention suicide, and Timur's own chroniclers reported he died of whooping cough and a disease called hunak, makes natural causes the far more likely explanation. Timur was extremely saddened by the death of Yildirim Bayezid. Therefore, he gave his body to his son Musa Çelebi and allowed him to be buried in Bursa. He also granted him a travel allowance and issued a menshur, officially recognizing him as ruler, on the condition that he submit to Timur's authority. Thus, 4 princes were now competing for control of the Ottoman throne. At this point, the possibility of a unified Ottoman recovery had vanished. According to the letter of victory and the Düsturnaim-i Enveri sent by Timur to Emir Yılmaz, it was revealed that the missing Prince Mustafa Çelebi had been taken to Samarkand. Mustafa Çelebi, whom Ottoman historians believed to have disappeared or died, would later escape from captivity and attempt to claim the Ottoman throne. Timur remained in Anatolia until March 1403. His true objective was to defeat his greatest rival, Yildirim Bayezid, and to seize the wealth of Anatolia, which lay weakened after its defeat. For this reason, he neither sought to tightly secure the region nor made any attempt to cross into Europe. Therefore, he contented himself with taking these lands under his subordination. In the end, Timur began his return to Samarkand, leaving behind 5 rival Shehzadis locked in a bitter struggle for the throne. After the defeat at Ankara, Shehzade Emir Suleman fled to Romelia and declared his rule in Edirne, legitimized by a menshur, a formal charter issued by Timur. As the eldest son of Sultan Bayezid, Suleman was widely regarded as the rightful heir to the Ottoman throne. Upon claiming power, he negotiated a treaty with Eastern Rome, agreeing that no Ottoman ships would pass through the Dardanelles. He also ceded Kartal, Pendik and Gebze, 3 key towns on the Anatolian coast, to the Byzantines. In Romelia, he surrendered the Black Sea coastline up to Varna, the city of Thessaloniki, and the region of Thessaly in northern Greece. He also gave his brother Qasim Çelebi and his sister Fatima as hostages to the Roman emperor. He himself married the emperor's daughter and established kinship with Eastern Rome. The Ottoman army was also forced to withdraw from Albania. After the war, Serbian king Stefan Lazarević returned to his domain and quickly gained the upper hand over the Branković family. To avoid losing Serbia, Shehzade Suleman had no choice but to grant Lazarević a series of concessions. This allowed the Serbian alliance to hold for a while. Encouraged by the devastation the Turks had suffered at Ankara, the former Tsarist family of Bulgaria launched a rebellion against the Ottomans, but Suleman succeeded in suppressing the uprising. Still, despite all his efforts, the Ottomans had now shifted to a defensive stance in Romelia. Shehzade Suleman held the upper hand among Bayezid's sons, supported by powerful statesmen and commanders who had once served his father. By his side stood Grand Vizier Sandarlı Ali Pasha, Janissary Aga Hasan Aga, Evrenos Bey, Mihalolu Mehmed Bey, Murat Pasha, and Subaşı İne Bey, names that commanded respect across the empire. He had a military force of 30,000 men loyal to him. After settling his affairs through a series of political agreements in Romelia, Emir Suleman sought to expand his influence into Anatolia, sparking a new phase in the rivalry among the princes. At the time, Anatolia was a land in flames. Its cities lay in ruins. Nomadic elements had risen up and turned plunder and banditry into a way of life. These roving bands exploited the collapse of central authority, raiding towns, committing assaults, and spreading chaos wherever they went. They knew no loyalty to homeland or nation. Their only allegiance was to war and spoils. Amid this anarchy, parts of the urban population, seeking refuge from looting and destruction, began to demand the immediate restoration of order. But the question was not how order would return, it was who would bring it. Çelebi Mehmed went to Amasya, where he was governor, with Bayezid Pasha of Amasya, who had survived the war, and 1,000 of his soldiers. Upon his arrival, he immediately took control of the area around Amasya, Tokat and Çorum and stabilized it. Musa Çelebi, one of the princes, after burying his father Yıldırım Bayezid in Bursa, seemed to be in control of the capital of Bursa, Iznik and Eskişehir. Another prince, İsa Çelebi, was in control of the Karesi lands. From the moment he arrived in Amasya, Çelebi Mehmed's life was marked by constant struggle. The Kanik Beys, seeking to exploit the power vacuum in the Ottoman realm, refused to submit to him and attempted to seize the cities under his control. Although Çelebi Mehmed's army was quite small, the Kanik Beys commanded significantly larger forces. As a result, İnaloğlu advanced on Tokat, Kubatoğlu attacked Niksar, and Gözleroğlu targeted Çorum. The strongest among them, Mezit Bey, took advantage of the disorder and moved towards Sivas. Çelebi Mehmed was forced to confront all of them at the same time. He first defeated the son of Gosla. Then he marched to Tokat and attacked the forces of İnalolu. According to the Ottoman histories, İnalolu had an army of around 20,000 men under his command. Although the number of Çelebi Mehmed's troops is unknown, it was obviously much less than that. The two armies clashed in Kazova in a fierce and devastating battle. In the end, Çelebi Mehmed emerged victorious, defeating his enemies once again. The fate of Kubat's son, who then besieged Niksar, was the same as the others. Thus, despite his young age, Çelebi Mehmed staunchly defended the region he had once governed. Moreover, he succeeded in bringing the Beys of Kanik under his obedience. Çelebi Mehmed then ordered a military campaign and entrusted Bayezid Pasha with leading a force tasked with recapturing the city of Sivas. Although Mehmed Bey defended Sivas with courage and fortitude, in the end, the city was retaken by Bayezid Pasha. Thus, when Sivas was taken back, Bayezid Pasha sent Mehmed Bey to Amasya. Admiring his courage and bravery, Çelebi Mehmed pardoned Mehmed Bey and even appointed him as the governor of Sivas. Mehmed Bey, who was also known for his striking appearance, tried to rebuild the city of Sivas, which had been devastated during Timur's invasion. He later joined the ranks of the Ottoman commanders and fought alongside Çelebi Mehmed in many battles, proving himself to be a capable and loyal commander. The first battle between the princes was between Isa and Musa Çelebi in western Anatolia. Isa Çelebi, who dominated the Karezi region, quickly gathered supporters and strengthened his army with the support of the nearby Beys. His first goal was to take Bursa, the former Ottoman capital, from his brother Musa. For this purpose, Isa Çelebi, who took action with his army without wasting time, marched towards the city of Bursa. Musa Çelebi, who heard that his brother Isa was coming against him, wanted to arm the people of Bursa and prepare for defense in the city. However, the people of Bursa sent representatives to Musa Çelebi and said the following: "We support neither prince, nor do we oppose either. Settle this matter between yourselves as brothers. If you drag us into this conflict, you will open wounds that may never heal. The soldiers under your command may owe you their loyalty out of conscience, but we humbly ask that you do not let this dispute divide the people of this nation." This response was a clear reflection of the Ottoman people's wisdom and strength of character. Rather than taking sides like sports fans and turning against one another, the people chose unity. At that point, Musa Çelebi, seeing that Isa Çelebi was rapidly advancing, realized that it would be too dangerous to try to defend the city. He had neither enough soldiers under his command nor the support of the local population. So he abandoned the city. To save his life, he first took refuge in the Karamanid Principality, but he didn't stay there long. When his brother Mehmed Çelebi called for him, he accepted his protection. Thus, Isa Çelebi took control of the city of Bursa without a single battle. When Mehmed Çelebi learned that his elder brother Isa Çelebi had seized Bursa and established it as his seat of government, he immediately mobilized to reclaim the city. The forces assembled against Isa set out for Bursa under the command of Yakup Bey, son of Hoca Firuz Bey. In response, Isa Çelebi sent Sarı Timurtaş Pasha under his command. When the two armies came face to face at the Armenian waste, Çelebi Mehmed's commander Yakup Bey defeated Sarı Timurtaş Pasha. Following the defeat, Sarı Timurtaş Pasha withdrew with his remaining troops and returned to Isa Çelebi. At that moment, Mehmed Çelebi himself arrived and assumed command of the army. He then marched directly toward the city of Bursa. The two armies engaged in a fierce battle here. The victor of the battle was Çelebi Mehmed. Isa Çelebi barely escaped with his life and fled to Istanbul, where he sought refuge with the Roman Emperor. Sarı Timurtaş Pasha, who survived the battle with injuries, was later captured and executed. Thus, having captured the city of Bursa, Mehmed Çelebi also established control over Iznik and its surrounding regions. Meanwhile, Isa Çelebi, who also received support from the Roman emperor, went to his brother Emir Suleman. He explained what had happened and said that Çelebi Mehmed had established his dominance in Anatolia and that his next step would be to attack Romelia. The fact that Çelebi Mehmed was ruling Anatolia alone was a threat to Emir Suleman. In order to break his power, he supported Isa Çelebi and sent him to Anatolia. Finally, Isa Çelebi, with the support he received from Emir Suleman and troops gathered from around Balıkesir, regained his strength and assembled an army of 12,000 men. Seizing the opportunity presented by Mehmed Çelebi's absence in Amasya, Isa Çelebi immediately marched toward Bursa. Isa Çelebi, attempting once again to capture Bursa without a fight, encountered resistance from the city's inhabitants this time. Consequently, he decided to lay siege to the city. Upon receiving news that Isa Çelebi was advancing on Bursa again, Mehmed Çelebi immediately set out with his army. The army arrived just in time, before Isa Çelebi could seize control of Bursa and once again faced him on the outskirts of the city. In this second battle, Mehmed Çelebi secured his second victory against Isa Çelebi. Once again managing to escape alive, Isa Çelebi this time took refuge with İsfendiyar Bey of the Kandarolu Principality. With forces provided by İsfendiyar Bey, he launched an attack on Ankara Castle this time. Upon this, Çelebi Mehmed arrived here with a force of 3,000 men, and the two brothers once again engaged in battle. Once again, Çelebi Mehmed emerged victorious from the battle. However, Isa Çelebi managed to escape capture once more. This time, he fled to the Aegean coast and sought to rally the local beyliks to his side. After persistent efforts, he succeeded in forming an alliance with the beyliks of Saruhan, Aydın, Kermiyan, and Menteşe, and raised an army of 15,000 men. At last, having completed his preparations, Isa Çelebi once again marched against Çelebi Mehmed. Çelebi Mehmed fought with 10,000 men against the 20,000-man army of Isa Çelebi and once again won a great victory. Once again, Isa Çelebi managed to escape capture and fled the battlefield. He seemed to have inherited his father Yıldırım Bayezid's agility and relentless ambition. Mehmed Çelebi now intended to deal with the Western Anatolian beyliks that had supported Isa Çelebi by sending troops into Ottoman lands. To this end, immediately after his last battle with Isa Çelebi, he marched with his army toward the province of Saruhan. In a short time, he captured the city of Manisa and executed Huzur Shah, son of Saruhan, who had betrayed his father. Thus, the lands of the House of Saruhan were once again incorporated into the Ottoman realm. Çelebi Mehmed then marched on the lands of the Germianolu Principality. Yakup Bey, who had commanded Timur's left flank at the Battle of Ankara, upon hearing of Çelebi Mehmed's approach, promptly surrendered the keys to his fortresses, thus sparing himself the fate that had befallen the son of Saruhan. The other beyliks, recalling what Yıldırım Bayezid had done during his first Anatolian campaign, were overcome with fear. As a result, the beyliks of Aydın and Menteşe immediately sent envoys to Çelebi Mehmed, declaring their recognition of his sovereignty. Meanwhile, Isa Çelebi once again sought refuge in the Karamanid Beylik and attempted to raise a new army there. However, Çelebi Mehmed had maintained good relations with the Karamanids. He mobilized many of his men to capture Isa Çelebi. The Karamanids, having seen Isa defeated 4 times, refused to help him. At one point, Isa left Karaman for the last time and crossed into Ottoman territory, but Çelebi Mehmed's men, who controlled the region, found him in a bathhouse in Eskişehir and strangled him to death. His body was brought to Bursa and buried beside his father. Thus, one of the princes withdrew from the struggle for the throne and was removed from the scene. The Anatolian side of the Ottoman Empire was now in the hands of Çelebi Mehmed, and the Romelia side was in the hands of Emir Suleman. The next phase of the Fetret period was to be characterized by a clash between the Anatolian side and the Romelian side. According to the supplementary series of historians, while these struggles were taking place in Anatolia, Emir Suleman was busy with drinking and pleasure in Edirne. Emir Suleman, who was said to be very fond of baccarat, was completely immersed in these drunken orgies. However, Çelebi Mehmed's growing strength and his defeat even of the armies of the western Anatolian principalities had awakened Emir Suleman from his revelry for a while. In any case, the state affairs were managed by the Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha rather than himself. His greatest strength was the presence of loyal commanders and skilled statesmen who backed his rule. Çandarlı Ali Pasha, a shrewd politician as well as an experienced statesman, eventually drew Emir Suleman's focus back to Anatolia. Finally, Emir Suleman crossed the Dardanelles with his army and set foot in Anatolia. He marched directly towards the old capital Bursa. Upon learning that his elder brother Emir Suleman was advancing toward him, Çelebi Mehmed chose not to risk an open battle. He was well aware of the power of Suleman's statesmen and janissaries, and of the small size of his own army, so he withdrew to Amasya. The city of Bursa immediately opened its gates to Emir Suleman, and Karesi, Saruhan and the vicinity of Bursa came under the rule of Emir Suleman. Emir Suleman then tasked Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha with the conquest of Ankara. The castle of Ankara was guarded with strength and fortitude by Firuzolu Yakup Bey. Çelebi Mehmed sent a letter to the commander of the castle, asking him to continue the defense until he arrived. However, the men who brought the letter fell into the hands of Vizier Ali Pasha. Ali Pasha, who was a cunning man, had at this time resorted to a trick of warfare and skillfully changed the wording in the letter without the knowledge of those who brought the letter, and changed Çelebi Mehmed's letter to the surrender of the city since he could not come himself. He then staged the situation carefully so that when Yakup Bey received the letter bearing Çelebi Mehmed's seal, he believed it to be genuine and surrendered the fortress to Ali Pasha. At that time, Çelebi Mehmed advanced with the army he had gathered to reclaim Ankara. However, upon realizing that the city had already been surrendered, he deemed his forces insufficient and refrained from launching an assault. He also avoided a direct confrontation with Çandarlı Ali Pasha, the vizier of his late father Bayezid. Instead, he opted to harass the enemy through ambushes and hit-and-run tactics. While Çandarlı's forces advanced toward him, Çelebi Mehmed set traps along the way, inflicting casualties. This was the tactic that Çandarlı Ali Pasha had recommended to Yildirim against Timur. Çelebi Mehmed engaged in battle with the forces of Evrenos Bey advancing toward him. Çelebi Mehmed was receiving daily intelligence from Bursa through his spies. His elder brother Emir Suleman had mobilized the majority of his forces on a campaign against the western Anatolian beyliks, securing their allegiance. Taking advantage of his brother's army being on campaign, Çelebi Mehmed aimed to catch him off guard in Bursa and swiftly moved his forces toward the city. When news reached Suleman as he arrived in the Sakarya Valley, he was overcome with fear and considered abandoning the city of Bursa. However, Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha dissuaded him, arguing that fleeing would damage his image, cause his loyal followers to lose confidence, and incite panic among the population who recognized his rule, driving them to the side of Çelebi Mehmed. Meanwhile, to buy time until the soldiers in western Anatolia could regroup in Bursa, a contingent under Evrenos Bey was dispatched to delay Çelebi Mehmed. Çelebi Mehmed fought with the forces of Evrenos Bey who came against him. This old wolf had served as a commander in the Ottoman state since the reign of Orhan Gazi. Many fortresses had been conquered and many armies routed under his command. Yet this great commander was defeated by Çelebi Mehmed. After the defeat of Evrenos Bey, the situation became even more dangerous for Emir Suleman. However, the Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha was not a statesman who would give up so easily, and he resorted to another war trick against Çelebi Mehmed. He wrote a letter to him, complaining about Emir Suleman and stating that he would henceforth offer him his loyalty, and then gave him the following news, which should be regarded as a sign of his loyalty. There is unrest brewing in the army. Several of your officers are looking for a chance to defect to Suleman. So be extremely cautious. I will keep you informed as much as I can. Çelebi Mehmed was only 17 or 18 years old when he personally experienced the pain of betrayal as a right-wing commander in the Battle of Ankara. He had every reason to fear treachery. Çandarlı Ali Pasha was also attacking his psychology. Nevertheless, Çelebi Mehmed did not believe in the authenticity of this letter he received from Ali Pasha and thought it was a trick. However, just a few days later, the sudden defection of a notable figure, Sharapta İlyas, to Emir Suleman's side, convinced Çelebi Mehmed, convinced him that the warning was real and the vizier's ruse had worked. Following this, Çelebi Mehmed, with the approval of Vizier Bayezid Pasha, abandoned his advance and withdrew. Çandarlı Ali Pasha had once served as the Grand Vizier to Murad Vafar and was a statesman of extraordinary talent. From childhood, Mehmed knew that his father, Kara Halil, and Ali Pasha were among the architects of the Ottoman state. If Emir Suleman's inner circle had truly consisted of only such men, Mehmed's task might have been far easier. But now, he had no choice but to stand against this formidable cadre. After Çelebi Mehmed returned to Amasya, Emir Suleman marched his army to Sivrihisar. This had previously been Ottoman territory, but after the Battle of Ankara, it had been annexed by Timur to the territory of Karamanolu. Once Suleman recaptured it, he sent an army under Evrenos Bey's command into Karaman. As Suleman's growing power became increasingly threatening, Çelebi Mehmed began seeking an alliance with the Karamanids. Therefore, Karamanolu Mehmed Bey and Çelebi Mehmed formed an alliance against Emir Suleman. Learning of this alliance, Evrenos Bey did not advance further and retreated to Ankara. Advance and withdrew to Ankara, having brought most of the western Anatolian beyliks under his sway and reclaimed Ankara. Emir Suleman had left Çelebi Mehmed in an extremely desperate position. With Suleman now asserting control over both Romelia and western Anatolia, Çelebi Mehmed no longer had the power to drive him out of the region. Even the alliance with the Karamanids offered little real security. The only development that could be considered a positive turn for Çelebi Mehmed was the death of Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha. Just when Emir Suleman appeared to be in full control, he was suddenly deprived of the vizier who had guided him in all his affairs. Çelebi Mehmed put into practice a very cunning plan. If he could move Musa Çelebi, who was under his command, to the Romelia side, he could drive Emir Suleman away from Anatolia and bring the war to the Romelia side. Musa Çelebi, who had been with Çelebi Mehmed since his liberation from Timur's captivity and had obeyed him, had promised to fight on behalf of Mehmed Çelebi when he crossed to Romelia. The fact that Isfendiyar Bey, the ruler of Kastamonu, was in contact with Romelia via the Black Sea was utilized in the transfer of Musa to Romelia. Mircea, the Wallachian voivode who had opposed Yildirim at the Battle of Nibolu, was secretly contacted and he was recruited for the cause. Everyone was thinking of their own interests and wanted to break the power of the most powerful Ottoman prince. Thus, Musa Çelebi boarded a ship from Sinop and sailed straight to the coast of Wallachia. Musa Çelebi, who set foot on the shores of Wallachia, managed to gather some forces around him as a result of a feverish work. Voivode Mircea was helping Musa. Musa also married Mircea's daughter and became his son-in-law. Moreover, not only Wallachia but also Serbs and Bulgarians supported Musa Çelebi against Emir Suleman. Emir Suleman, who was in Bursa, never calculated that his rival could cross to Romelia through Wallachia. Until then, passage into Romelia had always been limited to two routes, the Straits of Istanbul and the Dardanelles, both of which Suleman believed to be fully secure, but his rivals crossing via the Black Sea, combined with growing support in the Balkans, threw Suleman into alarm. He immediately mustered his army, abandoned his ambitions of expanding into Anatolia, and marched straight to Romelia to defend his capital. Thus, Çelebi Mehmed succeeded in his plan and achieved his goal, taking advantage of Emir Suleman's withdrawal from Anatolia to regain the lands he had lost in Anatolia. The war had now shifted from Anatolia to Romelia. Emir Suleman had crossed to Romelia via Constantinople and had received reinforcements from his ally, the Eastern Roman Emperor. Musa Çelebi, on the other hand, moved directly against his brother Emir Suleman with the Wallachian, Serbian and Bulgarian troops gathered under his command. There were Christian soldiers on both sides. Suleman had Eastern Roman forces on his side and Musa had Balkan forces on Musa's side. However, despite the loss of a statesman like Grand Vizier Chandarlı Ali Pasha, Emir Suleman still had the mighty commanders and Janissary army of Yıldırım Bayezid's time on his side. Therefore, Emir Suleman was superior to his brother Musa in terms of combat capability. At the fiercest moment of the battle, the Serbian king Stefan Lazarević, who was under the command of Musa Çelebi, switched sides and joined the ranks of Emir Suleman. Musa Çelebi was defeated against his brother and quickly left the battlefield with his remaining soldiers. Although Musa Çelebi was defeated, he did not lose hope and continued his struggle with even greater resolve. Emir Suleman, on the other hand, did not try to fully reap the fruits of his victory. As such, he did not try to pursue and capture the defeated Musa Çelebi. Even though Musa Çelebi was still in Romelia, that is, the danger for Emir Suleman was still present, this son of Yıldırım had again indulged too much in the debauchery that was his habit. Drink was ruining Emir Suleman. In the history of Solak Saadet, this situation is expressed in the following words. He was accusing Nushkamı Bade from his gentle and pleasant hand, singing in the baths of Edirne every morning and evening, and he was giving his mind and perception to the Nafs Emara. Although he was a well-educated and capable man, Emir Suleman's fondness for alcohol gradually dulled his better qualities. His behavior alienated those around him, and with the passing of Grand Vizier Chandarlı Ali Pasha, who had masterfully concealed Suleman's weaknesses and excesses, he was left without guidance. Meanwhile, Musa Çelebi took full advantage of the growing resentment and opposition in Romelia and steadily gathered forces around him. At last, upon learning that Emir Suleman was once again indulging in his lavish bathhouse pleasures, Musa seized the moment and marched suddenly on Edirne with his assembled troops. Faced with this alarming situation, Mihalolu Mehmed Bey, one of the frontier lords, immediately went to Emir Suleman in hopes of waking him from his slumber of heedlessness and warning him about the severity of the threat. But Suleman, still dazed under the influence of alcohol, dismissed him by murmuring a couplet and waved him away. Shortly after, the seasoned veteran Evrenos Gazi came to Suleman and offered the same warning. Emir Suleman, however, scoffed and replied, "O old pilgrim father, Are you mad to come here and disturb my pleasure with these delusions? Who is this Musa that he would dare think of taking the throne from me? Meanwhile, Musa Çelebi's forces had reached Edirne and started to besiege the city. When the situation became critical, the Janissary Aga Hasan Aga went to Suleman for the last time. Enraged by being disturbed for the third time, Emir Suleman commanded his men to seize the Janissary Aga and have his beard and mustache publicly shaved off as a mark of humiliation. All the commanders, especially the Janissary Aga Hasan Aga, concluding that no good could come from Suleman, opened the gates of the castle of Edirne, which Musa Çelebi was besieging, and pledged allegiance to him. Abandoned by his commanders and left with no support, Emir Suleman finally sobered up from his drunken stupor. As the full weight of the danger dawned on him, he fled in panic toward the capital, desperate to save his own life. As Emir Suleman fled Edirne in haste toward Istanbul, a group of Turkmen tribesmen recognized him by the richness of his garments and the finery of his horse. They ambushed him, seized his gold, garments and horse, and then beheaded him. Emir Suleman, who lost his position and with it his life because of his drunkenness, was actually a mature person. However, his indulgence in drink and his immersion in the orgies of the baths had changed and upset his personality and character. According to Ashik Pashazadeh, when Musa Çelebi received the news of his brother's murder, he was furious and set Turkmen villages on fire. Emir Suleman's body was buried next to his grandfather Muradi Hudavendigar. Thus, one more prince was deprived of his claim to the Sultanate, leaving only two princes. Musa Çelebi took possession of Edirne, and Yıldırım's powerful commanders swore allegiance to him. However, before leaving Anatolia, Musa Çelebi had promised to remain loyal to his brother Çelebi Mehmed and fight on his behalf in Romelia. However, after taking power in Romelia, he broke this promise and declared his own sovereignty, had a khutbah read and coins minted in his name. Thus, the Ottoman Empire was divided into two, Romelia and Anatolia. The next struggle of the Fetret period would be between Musa Çelebi and Mehmed Çelebi. Musa Çelebi was no idle figure like Emir Suleman. On the contrary, he was vigorous and courageous, much like his father. He was also known for his stern and at times ruthless temperament, traits that would eventually work against him. At first, however, his rise was welcomed. The Ottoman commanders and soldiers, aflame with zeal for holy conquest, were relieved to see the indulgent and idle Suleman replaced. They longed for the resumption of the Islamic campaigns that had been stalled for years, but this early enthusiasm would not last. Musa Çelebi distrusted the former officials of Emir Suleman and dismissed most of them. He appointed a blind man named Melekşah as his vizier, Mihalolu Mehmed Bey as Beylerbey, and Sheikh Bedreddin as chief judge, Kazaska, a man whose future rebellion would soon bring great trouble upon the Ottoman state. The first thing this brave and active prince of Yıldırım Bayezid did was to ask the Serbian king to pay for his betrayal. In the first battle with Emir Suleman, the Serbian king Stefan had switched sides and betrayed Musa Çelebi while he was under his command. He marched into Serbia with his army and defeated the forces of Stefan Lazar. He conquered Nova Bada, an important mining center. He captured many captives from here and made Serbia his ally. At that time, the Bulgarian prince in Vidin had revolted and gained independence in this region. Musa Çelebi immediately marched to the region and managed to take it back. He then moved on to Macedonia and strengthened the loyalty of the people there to the Ottomans. He then declared war on the Roman Empire and set out with his army to reclaim the lost lands in Greece. He retook Thessaly and northern Morea, territories that had once been conquered during his father Sultan Bayezid's reign. He then retook the Black Sea coastal lands from the Byzantines, territories that had previously been ceded to the Byzantine Empire by Emir Suleman. Musa Çelebi was a devoted and loyal son of Sultan Bayezid. While the other princes abandoned the field at the Battle of Ankara, he remained by his father's side and was captured along with him. Musa Çelebi held a deep grudge against the Byzantine Empire, blaming it for the disasters that had befallen his father. Determined to exact revenge, he sought to conquer Constantinople and end the Byzantine reign. According to the Byzantine historian Ducas, Musa gathered the leading notables of Thrace, Macedonia, and other provinces and addressed them with the following speech. You know how Timur shook all of Asia, and how my father fell into the hands of those ruthless men. Make no mistake, it was the Byzantines and their emperor who brought this disaster upon us. They opened the gates of our homeland to Persians, Tatars, and a host of foreign invaders. Because of them, our lands were pillaged and ruined, and my brother, he came only to deepen the ruin and betray his nation. He showed no reverence for our father and even allied himself with the Byzantines. He handed over lands that my father and forefathers had won through blood and sweat to the eternal enemies of the Turks. So I say this without hesitation. My brother became half an infidel, and God turned his face from him, placing the prophet's sword in my hand. Now I stand before you. With God's will and your strength, I shall conquer the mother of cities, Constantinople, and bring my father's betrayer to justice. Musa Çelebi then set out with his army to besiege Constantinople in the year 1411. As soon as Musa Çelebi reached the outskirts of Constantinople, he found that the surrounding villages had been completely deserted. This was because the Byzantine Emperor Manuel had brought the villagers inside the city walls. During Musa Çelebi's siege, the walls of Constantinople were bombarded with cannon fire, and the people fiercely resisted. In an effort to break the siege, the Roman Emperor Manuel dispatched Prince Orhan, son of Emir Suleman, to Romelia with the task of rallying supporters to oppose Musa Çelebi's growing power. When Prince Orhan became active in Thessaloniki, bolstered by the arrival of several raiding troops who joined his cause, Musa Çelebi was compelled to partially lift the siege of Constantinople. He left some troops in the siege and proceeded directly to Thessaloniki. Musa Çelebi managed to scatter the forces under Prince Orhan's command. After Orhan was defeated and took refuge in the fortress of Thessaloniki, Musa Çelebi began the siege of the city as well. Knowing that Musa Çelebi would come back at him as soon as he settled the matter of Shehzade Orhan, the Roman Emperor Manuel found the solution to get rid of Musa Çelebi by asking for help from Çelebi Mehmed. He believed that by setting the princes against each other, he could ensure Rome's survival amidst the chaos. Thus, Çelebi Mehmed was moving towards his goal step by step as if he was solving a math problem, for he required exactly such an offer as a pretext to move his army into Romelia. He played politics with Emperor Manuel with a feigned sincerity. He immediately gathered his army and marched to Üsküdar. With the help of Roman ships, he led his army across the Bosphorus to Constantinople. Musa Çelebi, who was informed that Çelebi Mehmed had crossed to Constantinople with his army, arrived here immediately, and the two armies faced each other in July 1412 at Invades. According to Neshri's account of the Battle of Invades, Çelebi Mehmed's right and left wings first attacked Musa Çelebi's wings. Soon after, Musa Çelebi's right and left wings broke down and began to disperse. As Çelebi Mehmed's forces pursued them relentlessly, Musa Çelebi, sensing that the battle was lost, attempted to flee the field. When Çelebi Mehmed realized this situation, he attacked towards Musa Çelebi's center line. but there were exactly 7,000 Janissaries in the center line where Musa Çelebi was. Although the Janissaries did not agree with Musa Çelebi's proposal to retreat, they obeyed his order and started to retreat slowly. When Çelebi Mehmed caught up with the swift cavalry, the Janissaries tasked with protecting Musa Çelebi engaged in a fierce battle against Çelebi Mehmed's advancing army. Çelebi Mehmed's forces stood little chance against the well-trained and fiercely loyal Janissaries. After a few hours of fighting, Çelebi Mehmed was wounded and his army was routed by the Janissaries. However, they still did not hand over Çelebi Mehmed to the Janissaries and managed to escape with him toward Istanbul with about 300 cavalrymen. Thus, Çelebi Mehmed's initially victorious army was defeated due to the zeal of the Janissaries. Çelebi Mehmed's victorious right and left wings also withdrew from the battle when they learned of their prince's defeat. Thus, Çelebi Mehmed suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of his brother Musa Çelebi and barely escaped by throwing himself into Istanbul. Following his defeat at Invades, Çelebi Mehmed retreated to Anatolia, where he began rebuilding his forces, while also working strategically to diminish the power of Musa Çelebi. He was friends and allies with the Roman emperor during his first passage to Romelia. He tried to maintain this friendship after his defeated retreat to Anatolia. He was also in communication with the Romelian beys who were dissatisfied with Musa Çelebi. Musa Çelebi, who was extremely brave and dashing, did not seem to grasp the importance of keeping the statesman in his entourage on his side. Because he held the statesmen responsible for the defeat against Timur at the Battle of Ankara, accusing them of abandoning the battlefield without his father Yıldırım's permission, he never missed an opportunity to remind them that they had left his father to face the enemy alone and openly condemn them for their treachery. Musa Çelebi's harsh attitude toward those around him gradually bred resentment among the statesmen. Distrusting them, he prioritized loyalty over merit and filled key positions in the state with only those he personally trusted. Musa Çelebi's greatest mistake was his decision to dismiss or sideline those who had previously rendered valuable services and held significant influence over the people of Romelia, thereby weakening his own position. One of those dismissed was Çandarlı İbrahim Pasha, the son of the late Grand Vizier Çandarlı Ali Pasha. This valuable statesman from the Çandarlı lineage later joined Çelebi Mehmed, who knew his value very well, appointed him to the rank of Vezir-i Azam. If Musa Çelebi did not have someone like Çelebi Mehmed fighting for the same cause in front of him, perhaps all these actions of his could have been tolerated. Had there not been someone like Çelebi Mehmed struggling for the same cause on the other side, perhaps Musa Çelebi's conduct would have gone unchallenged. But Çelebi Mehmed saw this as a golden opportunity. He focused all his attention on the Romelian nobility and spared no effort to win them over to his side. In the face of this hostile attitude, with the efforts of Çandarlı İbrahim Pasha, important figures such as Evrenos Gazi, Mihalolu Yaşibey, Budak and Sinan Beys joined the side of Çelebi Mehmed, largely thanks to the efforts of Çandarlı İbrahim Pasha. Among them, Evrenos Gazi's support was especially significant. Widely respected throughout Romelia, he had taken part in the region's earliest conquests under Orhan Gazi and had a hand in nearly every Ottoman acquisition there. Few knew Romelia's political and military landscape as well as he did. He became a key advisor to Çelebi Mehmed, guiding him on how to navigate Romelia's terrain and politics. Leveraging his deep network, Evrenos Gazi even secured the support of the Serbian king Stefan Lazarević for Çelebi Mehmed. In addition, Mehmed received military reinforcements from his father-in-law Dulkadiroğlu Nasreddin Bey and ultimately succeeded in raising an army of 30,000 men in Bursa. Çelebi Mehmed, who led his crowded army across the Bosphorus with the help of the Roman Emperor Manuel, proceeded directly to Visa with his soldiers and camped here. Evrenos Gazi maintained communication with nearly all the beys of Romelia and actively sought to persuade them to support Çelebi Mehmed's cause. As Çelebi Mehmed advanced toward Edirne with his army, he watched with amazement as each of the Rumeli beys arrived, bringing their own soldiers to join his growing forces. The old wolf had done his duty. Fate was calling him to become the new Ottoman Sultan. Thus, Çelebi Mehmed's army grew so large and formidable that Musa Çelebi no longer dared to resist. Left with only a few loyal supporters, the Janissary Aga Hasan Aga, Mihalolu Mehmed Bey, and Timur Umur Bey, Musa Çelebi found himself increasingly isolated from the great beys. Musa Çelebi, who did not dare to face Çelebi Mehmed's large army, left the city of Edirne and fled in the direction of Sofia. Stefan Nazarovich, the Serbian king, set out from his country by order of Çelebi Mehmed. Musa Çelebi, squeezed by Çelebi Mehmed from the south and Lazar from the west, was finally forced to fight near Samokov. In the battle fought here, Musa Çelebi was defeated. The Janissary Aga Hasan Aga, who had invited the Janissaries to join Çelebi Mehmed's side, was killed by Musa Çelebi with a sword blow. When this caused the Janissaries to join the side of Çelebi Mehmed, there was no chance left for Musa Çelebi. He fled in the northern direction with the few hundred horsemen he had left. Çelebi Mehmed assigned raiders to capture him. Finally, Musa Çelebi was captured by Saruka Pasha in a swamp and drowned to death on the spot. His body was sent to Bursa and buried next to his father Yıldırım Bayezid. Mihalolu Mehmed Bey, one of the prominent figures who remained loyal to Musa Çelebi to the end, was arrested and sent to Tokat prison known as Tatar Çardağ. Kaz soldier Sheikh Bedreddin was sent to Iznik and put under surveillance. Thus, the 11-year conquest period came to an end. All of Romelia and Anatolia swore allegiance to the last Prince Çelebi Mehmed, and Çelebi Mehmed was enthroned in Edirne as the 5th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire after his father Yıldırım Bayezid. It was now the era of Çelebi Mehmed.